Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session, and I hope you're going to have great fun. I'll be working with acetone and charcoal, which is quite a different medium, and the subject matter is going to be fish. So the title of this, I'm going blank. Oh my goodness. The title of this class is Fishy Tales, and basically, yeah, I mean, it's just a quirky little title. But before we get going, I think I'm going to show you a slideshow, and then I'll go on to the materials and show you what materials we'll be using. So let me just shift to a different slide. So this class was actually inspired by Casey Bow, and what he does is he does these beautiful portraits with charcoal, and then he uses acetone to get this. If you look on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see that all those blank spots are created with acetone on charcoal. I'm going to go to the next slide. And then today's lesson was inspired by this. So I went to an exhibition with my high school students, and I saw some of these fish on display. And I just thought this would be a wonderful little subject matter for this particular class, working with the fish with the colored pencils, and then a little bit of newspaper as collage, and then obviously introducing the charcoal. In quite a few of the lessons that I've taught recently for drawing expressions, I've used colored pencil and I've used ink. And so what I thought, it was actually logical to go back to the colored pencil and the ink and then introduce another element. So this particular lesson is almost like a culmination of previous lessons that I've taught on drawing expressions. Some more of these fish that I saw in this high school exhibition, colored pencil. It could be a bit of charcoal. I'm not quite sure what they've used, but I think most of it's colored pencil and then the newspaper collage on the surface. And then this one's quite beautiful. And this was the inspiration for craft card. So in terms of materials, you can actually work on any surface. You can work on craft card. I suggested in the PDF that people cut up old shopping bags and paper shopping bags and use them as a surface for their drawings today. I'm going to move to the next slide. So this is a copy of my little sketchbook, and this is at this stage on the slide, it was still in progress. But what's quite nice about this slide is that you can see the spots that are, so on the left is the photograph of my little sketchbook. It's a landscape sketchbook, and I'm working vertically in it and then fitting portraits into it. And then on the right, what I've done is I've made a collage of the two pages. And what you can see is the acetone that I've put on top of the charcoal. And you can see all those light spots are the acetone. I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, so this is my working space. I've got a reference image up, excuse me, and I'll just go through some of the equipment that you will need. So obviously you'll need your charcoal pencils. I've got one here for drawing. This is a woodless charcoal pencil, and it's covered in plastic, so it won't make my hands dirty. And then I've got some willow charcoal. This charcoal is compressed, so you can't use compressed charcoal for this technique. It works much better with a natural charcoal like a vine or a willow charcoal. So this is the charcoal that we're going to use. This will be used later for adding details. I have got a smudging stick. So this is just compressed paper. It's also referred to as a tortillon, and you could use this to smudge areas of your drawing. I've got quite a collection of colored pencils. So this is a large collection of all different brands. So I'm actually quite bad. I don't tend to stick to one brand, and I just experiment with a whole lot. So I've got water-based ones, and I've got oil-based colored pencils. And the colors that I've chosen out go with the fish that you see as the reference on the screen. I'll probably be drawing, so you'll need some erasers. So this is just an eraser that's like a little pen, so it's got a little square eraser in there. I've got the normal plastic eraser. I've got some jelly rolls for adding detail into the work, some fine liners. I've got a few fine liners and a brush pen. The fine liners are basically 0.5, so not too thin. I quite like this thickness of fine liner. And then this is a Tombow Fudenosuke pen. It's a brush pen and it's got quite a nice tip on it. I've also got quite a few Poscas. So I've got some white Poscas. I've got a whole lot of colored Poscas that I've pulled out. I might pull out more. And I've got some Sharpies. I might not use the Sharpies because they're quite transparent. So I've got a big variety of Sharpies. And what is essential is some artist fixative to, once you've done your acetone, to spray it on some fixative so it doesn't move anymore. You are going to need your acetone. I put acetone in a little spray bottle. And another, you can actually buy industrial acetone, but it's not necessary. You can just use nail varnish remover for this technique. I've got a few brushes. So the brushes are going to be used for applying ink, but just be careful. Excuse me. I have used, I think this one has been dipped into the acetone, and you can see that it's destroyed the paint that's on the wooden handle of that brush. So what I'm saying to you is pull out an old brush if you are worried about your brushes and you don't want to damage them. And then you can use any inks. So I've got these local brand inks. They're actually colored dyes. So when I say ink, you can substitute dye, or you can use watercolor, and you can use it with the technique that we're going to do today. You will also need a glue stick. I think this is a local brand. And I think that's it in terms of materials. I will probably use a little palette for mixing my inks. So I'm going to drop the inks in there and use that to mix the inks. I'm just going to put my materials aside. I've got a crazy amount of materials around me. I've got some water, so I put some water into jars. And I think that's it. Okay, so now paper. So I've got, this is a slightly textured paper, so I think this is a hot press watercolor paper. I've got, this is also slightly textured. It's probably hot press, again, hot press, some craft card. And then this was the shopping bag that I was talking about. This one's quite nice because it's got sort of an ocean theme already. So be quite nice to put a fish on top of that. And I think that's it. Oh, yes, a newspaper. So if we are doing a little bit of collage, you can use the newspaper. So what I'm going to do is just quickly show you just a little bit of a history of what I've done on drawing expressions. So this was an example of the first lesson using ink, tea, and colored pencils. So the colored pencils is a theme that's going through. And then I did these, which is colored pencils, and again, the ink, and yeah, a little bit of drawing with fine liners, and we did the mouths. And then for myself, because I had done the mouths, I wanted to work in this little sketchbook, and I've basically done the face. I've worked ink into it, and the background, I've put charcoal in the background, and then all these little spots are created with acetone, and then I've drawn the moths or the butterflies again. So this is almost a culmination of all the lessons that I've taught on drawing expressions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing, and I think I'm going to work in white, because I think it's going to be easier for you to see. So I'm pulling out excuse me. Oh, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. I've just recovered from a bit of flu, and my cough is still hanging on. So, or I'm battling to get rid of it at least. So I am sounding a little bit croaky at the moment. So you've got the reference on the screen. I'm going to just check to see that you can see me. Okay. I'm going to move. I've got an iPad under here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just moving the iPad slightly off so you don't see it and it's not reflecting. I'm just double checking it. So it's not reflecting on the screen because that's going to be very disturbing. Okay, and it looks like I've moved it sufficiently. So you've got that reference image to refer to. I'm just turning my iPad so the image is a little bit bigger for me. And I'm going to do start with a little bit of drawing. Okay, and I'm just positioning my paper so you can see what I'm doing. In fact, I'm going to move the stuff so I haven't got a whole lot of things underneath when I'm drawing. And I'm going to get going. Okay. So what I think I might do is draw this fish and then put some acetone in the background. So I'm going to put the charcoal down in the background. So when I start drawing, if you've been to any of my classes, I normally start very loose. And all I'm doing is focusing on positioning that fish onto this surface. I'm not really looking too much at the details. I'm trying to get an understanding of this fish's body. I've just moved it across a little bit just so that I can see I've got a paper reference sitting in front of me as well. And I've got a feeling this is too big already. I'm sorry about that noise. We've got a water tank that's next to my studio. And unfortunately, when anyone runs a tap in the house, the tank makes a noise. Okay, I'm going to just do this again. I'm just looking again, making this a little bit smaller. And then putting that tail in. And I'm just looking at the shape. Sorry, I had to go and yell at my husband. He does know that I'm teaching, so he shouldn't be running the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and put some charcoal into the background on this one. And then I think another one I'll probably focus on the fish. So I'm not worrying too much about the drawing right now. I'm just depositing charcoal. Yeah, as I was saying before, I got completely disturbed by our water tank pumping. In South Africa, we've got quite an issue with water. We don't always, and especially, well, it depends on which areas you live in. And the area that we live in, it's quite, the ground is very high. We live on a ridge, hill. And when our water reservoirs get empty, they battle to pump the water up to where we live. So some people actually end up going without water for days. So we made a decision to put in this tank. And what happens is when there is water, the water trickles in and the tank stores the water, but we have this pump that constantly pumps water into the house, and it just makes this really, really awful sound. So I do apologize again for that awful sound. I've got a little bit of kitchen towel. I forgot to tell you to get some kitchen towel, and I'm just softening the marks in that background. Okay. I might grab a little bit of newspaper, and then I think I'm just going to smudge all of this into the background. I did a little test for this over the weekend, and I approached it completely differently. But this is typical of me. I'm known to make things a little bit difficult for myself. And I tend to make art into a challenge. So here's hoping that it's not going to be a complete disaster today. So lots of praise to the art gods, please. So just depositing a fair amount of that willow charcoal, like I said, or the vine charcoal, and just rubbing it in. It's a good idea to avoid using your fingers with charcoal, just because you could be depositing oily marks onto the surface of your artwork. And excuse me. And then when you draw over it, the medium that you're using sticks to those oily marks. So where possible, avoid putting your fingers onto your art. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the nail varnish remover, and I've actually lost my spray bottle now. Okay, this is what happens when you have too much stuff on your desk. Absolutely insane. So, oh no, I can see it in front of me. Okay, I've just got too much stuff in front of me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the old brush, and I'm going to dip it into the nail varnish remover. And then I'm just going to flick. And you can already see those wonderful spots appearing. And I've filled this little bottle with acetone. So I'm going to see if there's any difference between using a brush and using acetone in a little bottle, in a little spray bottle. So, oops. So this is coming, oh, that's quite interesting. So it's a little bit more diffuse. So it's a lot softer than just flicking with a brush, which is quite interesting. So maybe a combination of the two. But lovely bubbly feeling. So I mean, that's one of the reasons I chose this technique, was because I thought all of these little bubbles could look quite amazing with a fish subject matter. So I'm just dipping in again and flicking. And I think my acetone is running out. No, it's not. I've still got some. Obviously, just got it on the wrong side of the bubble. So still just flicking. And I think just a little bit then I might stop with the acetone. Just be very careful and use acetone in a well-ventilated room. I had my cat in my studio with me, and I didn't realize how toxic this stuff is. And my cat ran into the house. Obviously, the acetone, he was breathing in the acetone, and he ran into the house and then started really coughing. So it's not good to have open chemicals in your studio. So I'm just going to tilt that off. And then what I'm going to do is I've got Artist Fixative, and you should, again, use this in a very well ventilated room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a quick spray. I'm just going to move it away from me. So I'm going to turn slightly away. And I'm just giving it a quick spray. And I should have done that outside. Okay, but hopefully it's going to stick everything down. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do now is use a little bit of ink, and then I'm going to start drawing into this. So I'm going to move this off the newspaper and put it down so it's a little bit more clear. And I'm going to pick up, I think, I've got this really, really bright fluorescent orange, so I'm going to use that. And I'm going to put that into this little palette. And I think I've got a wide brush in my, yes, I do. I've got a 1-inch brush that was in my desk. And I'm going to put a little bit of water down. Oh, that's the other thing. So the minute you put acetone down, the water paper doesn't behave like water paper anymore. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to pick up some of this ink and start spreading it around. So it becomes less absorbent. So the whole surface becomes a lot more slippery. Most of my work tends to start off very loose like this, and as I work up, it becomes tighter and tighter, or more and more tight. Okay, I don't know what the right expression is. So I'm using a little bit of this yellow, and I'm doing the same thing. Big brush. Putting some color down. Actually, that's very intense, so I might add water to that. And I quite like the way it's mixing down there. I am aware of the white areas, and I don't really want to lose all the whites on my little artwork. The other thing that I forgot to add is that you'll probably need a hairdryer of sorts, because this paint or ink might take some time to dry. But what's wonderful about the fixative is that it's kept, even when I'm painting over this. Look at that beautiful texture at the top there. it's retained the texture of those little bubbles from the acetone. Okay, and I think I am going to paint a little bit of blue into the background to imitate the blue background on that fish. So I'm picking up, this is a turquoise. And remember, like I said at the beginning of the session, that you can use any transparent medium. So you can use inks or watercolor or dyes, and they will all work. I'm just worried about the intensity of this blue. Yes, it's very, very strong. So just watering it down. And little seeps like that, I don't really mind. I think it just adds to the artwork. Okay, I'm going to pick up my bit of newspaper again because I've got some seepage going on. And again, I don't mind that. I love it when the artwork does things that I haven't anticipated, and I have to then adjust my approach because the medium has done something interesting. This feels a little bit kindergartenish, or like primary school to me. It feels like I'm teaching a primary school technique, but yeah, I promise it will become more and more sophisticated. It's looking very, very simple right now, but once we start drawing into it, it will improve. But there's also a wonderful simplicity here. I mean, I think that we often overcomplicate things. And it's amazing. I mean, within a few minutes, this already says fish, and you could almost recognize what fish it is without too much work. And we've got this beautiful bubbly texture in the background and on parts of that fish. So I'm quite pleased with that. So because I want to draw, I am going to pull out my heat gun, and I'm going to quickly give it a going over, and hopefully it's going to dry a lot of it, and then I can start working into it. So I'm just going to jump up again. Excuse me. And I've grabbed my heat gun, and I'm going to plug it in and just dry this little fish. If you haven't got a heat gun, use a hairdryer. The heat gun is just quite nice because so the heat gun's lovely because it's a dedicated instrument that I use in my studio, and my hairdryer is not getting wrecked. So this one was relatively inexpensive. It's not completely dry and it has slightly warped. I'm not worried about that because what I'll do is I'll just wet the back and put it under some books and it will dry. But I'm just going to make sure that the surface is not too damp. I'm just picking up a little bit of excess ink so that when I'm drawing, the medium will go down. It's not going to, the wetness is not going to disturb the medium that I'm working with. So I'm going to move this newspaper off again. And I'm going to start working with colored pencils. So I'm going to pick up, I think I'm going to pick up a black maybe to start off with. So I've got, this is called Thundersoft. It's a Krita colored pencil. And I'm going to start drawing into this. This eye of this fish is absolutely huge. And I might, actually, I'm not sure. I'm thinking out aloud here. I might shift to a medium that's a little bit more dramatic, just so that I can make more definite marks. So I think I'm going to pick up one of these Tombow pens. Actually, I'm not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this brush pen because I think it's going to make easier marks on the surface. Yes, it is. The thing you've got to watch with this brush pen, so this is a Pentel brush pen, is that it is water soluble. So if I go and put water on this, it will dilute. It's a beautiful pen because it's got this flexible nib. And oh, I really am battling with my my chest. Our country's just been hit by quite a bad outbreak of flu. And I ended up getting it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's just taken me a long time to recover. I'm not feeling ill, but this sort of hoarse chest with a cough has just lingered. And we are in exam season with our school. So, yeah, a lot of kids are getting sick. And they can't really afford it during exams. So this is their mid-year exams. So our schools run from the beginning of the year in January. We start in January and we end at the beginning of December. So I think it's quite different to some of the schools in other countries. Because I know that I've been on the internet and I've seen a lot of discussion about teachers being burnt out because it's the end of the year and they're feeling the strain. You know, we just almost halfway through our year. There's still a little bit of charcoal. I am picking it up. So probably when I finish this piece completely, I will go and put another layer of fixative in. That's obviously wet because it's starting to spread. As I'm drawing, I'm looking at what's underneath, and I don't really want to go over those little bubbles. So I'm just trying to make sure that and I'm not too worried about copying these fins exactly. So for me, it's capturing the feeling of this little fish rather than, it does look a bit shocked, rather than slavishly imitating every single detail. And I love that light patch. So I'm a little bit reluctant to start drawing into it with this pen and making dark lines. I'm just looking a little bit more carefully at the tail, so I'm just going to move this slightly. It's got quite a narrow tail. Not sure why I'm calling him he. Could be a she fish. And then just some lines to indicate that. The fins at the bottom, I'll draw into it with other media. And I'm forgetting this fin in the middle. Well, I'm not really forgetting, I'm aware of it, but I think I'm going to work into it with colored pencil and just keep it quite soft. I do tend to work with a broken line. I might go over it and emphasize it a bit later, but when I first start drawing, I always tend to work with this line that is broken. So I'm just coloring in that mouth. It would be quite nice to lighten. I know it's difficult to see, but it would be lovely to lighten it around the mouth. So I've got, oh, this is working. So this is a Chinese white Derwent artist pencil, and it is lightening up that area. So this is giving that area a lighter value without disturbing what's underneath too much. I'm going to draw into this eye. And then start going with the colored pencils. So I've got quite a variety of reds. I might work with the lighter oranges first. So this is a Lyra Polycolor. And then I'm picking up a red and working a bit of red into that. This is an inexpensive Kitty's brand colored pencil. So I might pick up a slightly more expensive one. This is the Faber-Castell, so that you can see the difference. Actually, it's not making that much difference. So this particular brand is called Colleen, and I normally order it for students at school, and they quite enjoy it. So if you are looking for colored pencils that aren't bad quality, that's not a bad one to start off with and then build up your collection. So just working reds into this little fish. And not forgetting that little fin. And I know that this very white rectangular shape is not in the original fish, but I do enjoy it. There's something about it that's quite interesting. So I don't think I'm going to get rid of that. I just picked up a jelly roll, a number 10. This is also a favorite pen of mine. I absolutely love them. They and especially a number 10. I don't even bother with the thinner ones just because I find that I damage them so quickly. And the number 10s hold up to me. So I'm looking in my bag for a black, because I want to make that eye very dark. So I'm looking for a black Posca. I've got a huge collection of Poscas or paint markers, and I probably won't be able to find a black. No, there's no black in this one. How insane is that? And let me have a look in. Yes, okay. So in the Sharpies, I do have a black. So I've managed to find my black Sharpie. And I can just fill that eye in. Yay. So the colored pencil wasn't dark enough. This is giving me the drama that I need. So the Sharpies tend to be, for me, they are a little bit more transparent, or I feel that they're transparent. But they're covering quite well here. And the Poscas tend to be a little bit more opaque. And if you don't have either of these, any type of marker would probably work. So if I start working into areas of that with the Poscas, you'll see the difference. So I've got a like a peach colored Posca. with Poscas, you need to, before you start using them, I've been using this one on another artwork and it's got quite dirty. But before you use them, you are meant to give them a good shake. And you are meant to pump them. And that activates the ink, and then you can start drawing with them. I was reading as well that Poscas should be stored on their sides, not stored upright or down. They should actually be kept on their sides. So I've put all mine into a bag, and that's what I'm doing. Okay, that is picking up. So remember I said that that pen that I used, the Pentel Brush pen, it responds to anything that's underneath. So you just need to, it might have been wiser to use the Sharpie to do the outlines. So if it keeps picking up, you'll see it's gone gray there. So if it keeps picking up this Posca, it might be a good idea for me to haul out the artist fixative and spray and then work into it again. Yeah, this has gone very dirty. There are some gray marks on this fish, so I'm not too worried. But you can see that mark that I've just made has created quite a nice opaque mark. So I'm just turning to my colored pencils again, just to work some softer marks into this. We actually had fish for dinner today. In South Africa, it's about 10 to 7. And my husband actually went and bought 2 pieces of fish, cooked, because I'm absolutely hopeless at cooking fish. So it always is wonderful to buy it from somewhere else where it has been cooked properly. This is a Stabilo aqua color, so this will respond to water. So I could pick up a smaller brush, and dip it into water, and you'll see that the colored pencil will respond to it. So that's quite a nice option, is to use a water-based colored pencil. Yeah, nothing, excuse me, nothing else is responding to it, to the water, just that one that I've just used. But what you can do is you can go back to your original inks and you can start working the values. So if I work that orange ink into the surface again, I can enhance the values of this fish. And just work into it in a more controlled manner. Rather than just splashing it everywhere. And I've got a little bit of red ink or red I can pick up quite a precise brush and put detail in. And I think this background needs to get a little bit darker. Just around parts of that fish. But I am aware of this texture that I don't really want to lose. So you've just got to be careful. So this texture that was created by the acetone, I do want it to remain in the final art piece. So what I'm going to do is maybe work with the black colored pencil and rather create the values around. So I'm going to draw into those little spots that have been created. And just enhance areas. And maybe a dark blue colored pencil would work as well. So I'm going to pick up a dark blue colored pencil and see if I can do okay, that's working. So maybe a combination of the blue and a black, and then painting that ink into areas. I'm going to pick up more ink, I think, and paint it at the bottom here. I'm trying to work sort of one section. If I was drawing on my own, I'd probably work all over a lot more, but I'm trying to work up a section of it so that you can actually see that if I carried on the drawing, I'm just worried that I'm not going to finish today, how it would develop. So I'm focusing on this side of the artwork. Excuse me. And I'd normally work up everything almost at the same time. But I really want to complete as much as possible so that you can see how I would develop this piece. So I'm just switching with my iPad. So I've just picked up this jelly roll again. And I'm just going to work some of the white highlights into this fish. And I might need a thicker medium. So I've got the Poscas. So this is a 0.9 to 1.3 millimeter bullet-shaped Posca white. If you don't have a collection of Poscas, you can also do this. You could paint with a brush with acrylics. Acrylics will cover all this medium as well. And I think gouache will cover, because gouache is quite opaque. So don't worry too much about going out and buying a whole lot of Poscas. Any of your opaque mediums will work in this way. I'm a bit reluctant to start drawing scales because I think once you start drawing scales, you're not going to stop. You're going to be there forever. But you could actually suggest scales with a few little dots. And this is already starting to suggest that there's a texture on this fish. What you could also do is use a stencil and stencil a pattern over that fish. And I often do that in my work as well. So if I grab hold of that little book of mine, I can show you what I do. So in an artwork well, like this, I didn't actually like this artwork and I just stenciled. I've got a little stencil that's got little lines in it. But I often use stencils just to fill areas. I've done the same there as well. So I would look for something that's got spots in it and tiny little dots, and then work it over the fish. This one's small. That would work very well. So this is gold, and that would work. You could see that would work very well as a texture over the fish. So, I mean, that's always a nice thing to remember is to, when you've got a repetitive texture, to just go and use a stencil, and then it just speeds things up. So you'll see some of these lines. Remember, I said that they were a little bit strong in the beginning. And just by working over it with this opaque Posca, it's making those lines less prominent. And I'm not trying to draw exactly over those lines. They are slightly off the black lines. And I think I'm going to pick up the ink and paint into this. So I want to create a feeling of that fish bulging in the middle and then getting darker on the sides. So I'm going to pick up maybe the yellow and the orange and paint that in. Just cleaning my brush. This brush is a bit dirty, but anyway, it's going to create still had a little bit of blue in it. So this yellow has gone a little bit greeny, but it's not really worrying me. And you know what? I've been looking at this rectangle, and what I might do, I'm not going to go and look for my stencils now. I might work more rectangles into areas of these, even if I just take a Posca and draw rectangles, but I think I'm going to do it with a stencil and put more rectangles onto this fish, just because that is already suggesting it. But I will share what I do on the Drawing Expression Mighty Networks platform. So if you go on there, you will see my finished artwork, and then hopefully with all the rectangles that I've drawn in. These fins seem a little bit green, so what I'm going to do is maybe do that on purpose, put a little bit more green into these outside fins. This bottom one's got some red marks in it. Okay, that was a little bit strong. Oops, okay, very strong. Kitchen towel comes in handy, and then just lift it up. And just working more oranges into this. And then I'm dealing with those green fins. So these fins at the back are a greenish color. I'm looking at the screen and it looks like I haven't made my little fish fat enough, but I mean, I'm not worrying too much about that. Yeah, I've just mixed quite a dull green. And hopefully it's still looking quite yellow. So I might put a more blue into it. Okay, that's gone very green and quite dark. I'm just hoping this is going to dry a bit lighter. I'm working into this bottom fin. And then that tail. Oh, and I've got everything mixing on my little palette. So everything's getting quite dirty. But those, the tail and these fins are quite sort of a murky color, so I'm not too worried about that. Actually, I should be using a bigger brush. It just makes everything so much easier. So I've been mixing yellow into this. This has gone quite turquoise. Well, it's gone like sort of a greeny color. But I think it's going to work with this little fish. And if you do weird things like this and you accidentally mix up another color, if you have been in my classes before, my advice generally is to let people think that you've done it on purpose and don't just put it in one spot. Spread it around so that it looks like you have mixed up that color on purpose. I'm just keeping my eye on the time. I think I want to still work a little bit more red around that and some darkness into this fish just to create an illusion of 3 dimensions. And these fins need more detail, so I'm going to work into those. Just checking to see if this paper's dry enough, because I have just put that down. So what I might do is just pull out my heat gun again. And I've just picked up the Sharpie. Just adding a little bit more detail into that fin. And then going into it with the jelly roll. I can feel this is still wet. This combination of colors is quite foreign for me as well. I'm someone who works with, well, I don't normally work with this big range. And I suppose my work is looking pretty pastel at the moment, so I don't want to contradict myself. But I tend to go more for quite muted colors. Suggesting those fins. And then on the end of that tail as well. I think this composition would have been a little bit stronger if I had included or managed to get that tail into the artwork instead of it touching the edge. So it's a little bit uncomfortable right on the edge. Yeah, I should have done a little bit more planning. I don't really like forms going off the edge of an artwork. But I mean, perhaps I could break that up with a little bit of newspaper. So part of this artwork was inspired by those artworks that I started with in the beginning. So I'm just going to quickly go back to them and show you. So if I go back, I'm just going to go back. So this artwork was inspired by this piece that has got the newspaper on it. I didn't really want to wrap the fish with newspaper. I thought of perhaps using it in a more abstract way. You could glue it down and then paint into it. It's up to you. But I thought I'd rather just sort of have strips going across and maybe not have as many folds and make the artwork. And I mean, this is quite nice. I quite like the way the newspaper is used in this way. So I'm going to place bits of newspaper, and then I'm going to take my glue stick and glue it down, and then see. And I think it's going to add another dimension to the artwork. So I'm just going to go back there, and I'm going to pick up some newspaper and then just tear it. So I'm just leaning across, and I quite like newspaper that's got like sort of crossword puzzles on it. So I might use this little bit. I'm just looking. Okay, I don't want anything with too much color. So I'm going to take a bit of that crossword puzzle and then just tear a bit of it, because I quite like that pattern. Thinner piece. I'm just looking. Yeah, I think that's not bad. It adds another angle into it. So I might glue it down there. And then I think I'd like another piece somewhere else. I'm not sure if that frame's too obvious. I think that's also obvious. Maybe a piece that's going more vertically down. I think that could work. So I think I'm just going to commit to that. So I'm just taking my glue stick and I'm just putting glue on the back of this strip of newspaper. And then this one was quite vertical. Oops. And then this one, I think, at an angle. And then that tail's not as disturbing going off, I think. Yeah, I think that can work. So again, taking the glue stick. And then just positioning and then I'll cut those strips off. I've got a pair of scissors somewhere. Yes, I do. I've got a pair of scissors in my desk drawer. So I'm just going to cut these edges off. Okay. Hasn't stuck down too well. Actually, this would probably be better to do with a knife. So I think I'm going to leave it and I'll cut it later and cut it with a knife. And it'll be a little bit neater. And I quite like the fish going towards that bit of newspaper. The newspaper's adding just another dimension. And what you can do is you can draw up to the edge of that newspaper and you could almost create like a shadow next to it. So the newspaper almost becomes like a three-dimensional element. Like a barrier almost. And please share your work on the Mighty Networks Drawing Expression platform, and I'll definitely go in and make a comment. I'd love to see what you do with this lesson. I'm sitting here looking for my blue colored pencil. So it's not a good idea to go too crazy when you're drawing. I've just lost it completely. I'm going to reach across and find another blue pencil. This one's quite intense. It's quite an electric blue. I'm not sure if you're seeing it on the screen. The blue colored pencil was actually underneath the artwork. Okay, this one's much better. I think it's the same brand, but it just seems better than the other one. The top is getting a bit gray, so I think I need to paint into that area. But just one thing about collage, I have this crazy fear about collage coming off the surface of my artwork as the paint gets, not paint, sorry, the glue gets old and dry. So what I often do is run my artworks through my sewing machine and I stitch collage down. So that's one thing you could do. You could also hand stitch through paper, which is a lovely technique to explore. So you could do that as well. I don't really want to emphasize this part of the artwork, but I mean, that white is a little bit disturbing. It should be a little bit darker, just so that your eye is not drawn to that part. So I'm just going to put a little bit of green in there. And then I think I am going to add a little bit more detail into these little fins to suggest that they have got like little ridges. So I might draw into them maybe with a black colored pencil. You could also probably use a bit of green. And I made that line too prominent, so I'm just going to go over it with some black. And just try and soften it so it disappears. My cat's been very quiet today. He normally screams when I'm in my studio. Last night I took him for a walk and I did have him on a harness and a long lead on him, and he managed to escape. And it was raining, so there this cat was out in the dark in the rain, and thank goodness he found his way back to my neighbors. He ran away from me, and then they brought him to me. So I'm very grateful that he's been quiet today. So I've got 3 minutes left. I'm going to stop here And what I said is I'll probably go and do a little bit of stenciling into this and complete it, but I'll definitely share it on the Mighty Networks platform in drawingXpressions. And in the art section, I'll share this when it's done. So I'm just going to shift my cameras and or shift the slides back to the beginning. And I'm just going to say goodbye to everyone. Let me just get to that slide. Just going to flick back. Okay, and there we are. I'm just looking at the work behind me, and I think a lot of my work is quite muted. It's got a few bright spots, and my recent paintings are quite bright for some strange reason. But generally, if you look at the board behind me, a lot of the stuff is relatively muted or tends to be monochromatic. So yeah, I do find it unusual to work with such a variety of colors as I did today. But anyway, I hope you learned something from this session and enjoyed it. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.